Hey there, welcome to this episode on Friday, May 9, 2025 of the Coffee Solo random audio program. No particular release schedule, as you probably have noticed. I think it's been about a week since my last episode, which is unfortunate. I've been kind of busy, but I should make time to get this ball rolling. So thanks for checking it out. I'm recording this at 5:41 in the morning. The sun is rising here in the greater Vegas area. I think it's supposed to be really hot this weekend, but enough about the weather. Today normally I would choose the title after, but I do have an agenda today. I'm going to vent a little bit about noisy neighbors. Noisy neighbors. I do have one, most definitely. I have either upstairs or downstairs for most of the time that I've been at my current place of everything. My live work space. I even wrote a summary, which again I would normally do afterwards, but it is entirely possible that every one of us has experienced, let me typo that one, experienced the joy of living one floor below a dribbler of concrete basketballs. That seems to be what I have. So I thought I would reflect on that. I'll start with the fact that when I was in college, we lived in like the noisiest dorm on campus or whatever. And the people that lived above us, we lived on the ground floor of a 2-story dormitory called West Dorm at Harvey-Mudd College. And they would make noise. We lived in the same, myself and my roommates, basically lived in the same place for 3 years. Go figure. So we had a variety of upstairs roommates, but they tended to be reasonable. They weren't too bad. And considering we were the noisiest dorm and all that, allegedly, that is saying something, that they were pretty good. In fact, in our dormitory, and given the state of affairs at a place like Harvey-Mudd College, if you went and knocked on somebody's door or otherwise yelled out a window or whatever and said, "Hey, dude, we have a test tomorrow," they would have been like, "Oh, sorry." Really very little argument. So that was probably setting us up to fail because the real world is not so considerate. So when I moved to the Silicon Valley area, my first apartment with one of my college friends, it was a double master. So we each had our own bedroom on either side of the place. And we happened to be on a 3rd floor. So we didn't really have any noise from above. I will say this, and this was unexpected. I received one noise complaint for the entire, I think we lived there for a little over a year. And the noise complaint was really a little dubious. I got a call from the leasing office and I was like, well, do you hear any noise right now? And they said, no. I said, well, we're not, my roommate is not here and I'm working on my computer. So not much noise. So it didn't actually amount to anything. But yeah, I tend to keep my noise levels pretty reasonable because when you're in a communal living situation, apartment complex, or if you have shared or common walls with people. I lived in a townhouse with like a 4-plex at one point right near Apple, right on Homestead, if you know the area, Homestead, and not Matilda, but it was Saratoga Sunnyvale, I think. It turns into Matilda. And every once in a while, somebody would knock on the wall. Again, not thumping bass, not having big parties, probably just like later in the evening or something. So I have very odd expectations, I suppose, that people just sort of try to be cool. I told a leasing manager of a place I lived one time, I said, I don't even wear shoes usually, like, 90% of the time, 89%. Aside from putting them on and leaving or coming home and removing them, I try not to wear shoes, not only for the clean factor, but also I don't really feel the need to stomp around my apartment for the sake of the person downstairs, but also it just feels noisy to me. It feels like uncomfortably just annoying. It's annoying to me. And I'm not trying to be overly sensitive to noise, but still, I don't know if you do this, but it doesn't make sense to me to wear heavy footwear. Like if I came into my home with hiking boots or, ski boots, concrete boots. I don't know if you're hanging out with the wrong people at that point. The the effect on the people downstairs is annoying, but also why would I want to wear and move around with heavy footwear like that? That's just silly. You come home, you can relax, and you can not make noise for yourself or the other people around if there are any, certainly for people on other floors. So I've always done that. And they said, you shouldn't have to walk around your own home worrying about such things. I said, well, I don't spend my time worrying about it, but it just seems unnecessarily obnoxious to stomp around for the purposes of entertaining myself. I don't know. Why not be even a teeny tiny bit courteous to the people that live below me? So they were like, okay, well. At the time, my concern was that they were playing music at 3 a.m. that was super loud. And I would tell them, as always, I don't know if I will talk about this at some point on this program. I've talked about it in my other audio programs. During my college time, again, loudest dorm. So we built 7-foot tall speakers with a couple, 2 woofers in each cabinet, 2 12s. They were pretty loud. They were not bad for my second outing building outdoor speakers like that. The first ones kind of sucked. The second ones turned out really well. So we were playing music whenever, and then we would turn them off. So the fun part was I would always say, anytime there's noise complaint, I send a picture that we have of us, my roommates and myself standing in front of these things. And I say, I totally understand playing music loud. It's one of those things. I'm totally fine with it. Maybe not at 3 a.m. So I know I'm, call me Karen, I guess. Now lately, and so let me think. The common walls, I lived in an apartment in Sunnyvale again. So if we started on that 3-story place, we lived on the top floor. I moved into another place much later by myself. So it was a solo apartment, second floor of 2 stories, total silence. I didn't even know I had neighbors. They never made any noise. Neither did I. So that was always nice. The move to Vegas, well, and I've lived in other places where I had no common walls, which was nice. That's worthwhile. I moved to Vegas, and I lived in one apartment complex for many years. Someone above me at some point, I lived on the ground floor of a 4-story place. Somebody above me would wake up at around 5 a.m, I think. Why was I up at 5 a.m? I don't know. I had good reasons. And I would always hear, I kind of pictured that they were sleeping with like a 10-pound dumbbell on their chest. So in the morning they would wake up and the dumbbell would roll off their chest and smack the floor. So I would hear this dunk, dunk, dunk. And then they would get up and they would do their thing. And then I think they had like a rowing machine or maybe a I don't know, some sort of an exercise machine. So they would do that for a while. That wasn't really that noisy. I could hear it, but I was like, I could sleep through that. No problem. So that was probably an introduction to actual noisy neighbors. Before that, again, in college, not bad, but they would always, and we would do the same, of course, obviously. If somebody knocked on our door and said, hey, can you turn that down? Oh, let me get over to that volume knob. So in this case, I didn't even bother to ask, but it was a little odd. Always around the same time every morning, some weird ritual of sleeping with a dumbbell on his or her chest. So I moved to Vegas. I did that with that neighbor. I think over the course of the many years I lived there, there were maybe 1 or 2 other neighbors that lived upstairs or near. I'll tell you what, the worst part about where I lived at that time was I lived next to the elevator, and the elevator was profoundly noisy. And I'm going to get into why this sort of stuff is particularly frustrating for those of us who rent domiciles. So, yeah, and the reason I reminded you that I moved to Vegas because I was trying to think, was there another time? Yeah, I don't think I lived in a duplex the last time I was in Sunnyvale for the whole time. And my landlords were pretty nice. They lived in the other half of this duplex, the back half. I lived in the front half. There were garages between us, so that I didn't really have any common walls with them. So that was about as perfect as it gets if you're going to be renting a place. Anyway, so I moved from my long-term place here in Vegas, and I have been living in the current place for about 3.5 years, I think. And I've had all manner of weirdos. So I had the people downstairs playing the thumping bass at 3 a.m. And then I had people upstairs who had dogs with separation anxiety. at all hours of the night. And I love dogs. Dogs are great, but dogs should sleep too. And so there I was like, hey, can you just maybe tie? Because I'm not going to confront people. I'm not going to go introduce the notion of like retaliation or anything. That's ridiculous. So I just say, hey, I like dogs. Dogs are great. It'd be cool if they could sleep, maybe not make so much crazy like howling noises of sadness. So I appreciated that, but I also was like, come on. And they eventually, I think they just moved. I don't know if it was because of that. But then so right now, it's been since, I think it was October. I'm going to say October. So it's been 6 months. No, 8 months. 7 months. 7 months and some days. So let's just say 6 months. 6 months and whatever. I heard the person moving in upstairs. I heard quite a ruckus. Enough of a ruckus that I went upstairs. I live near the stairwell, right? The elevator is farther away. So I jumped up on the stairs there real quick, went upstairs. I come out of the stairwell. It's right near the front door of this place. And this guy's standing in the doorway, and his friend is coming up the hallway with like a cart of some sort. So I looked at this guy, and he's like, oh, hi. And I said, hi. And he goes, hey, do you know if there's an easier way to, so he started asking me questions about moving in, which is what he was doing. So I said, oh yeah, if you do this, and that. So I was trying to be helpful. And he said something that I find hilarious. He said, well, I'll try not to make too much noise. I'm still laughing at that. I have said to the leasing office person that I spoke to about this. By the way, when I went and spoke to them I didn't go there to speak to them about this. I was actually going there to speak about something completely different. And they said, so how are things in general? And I said, I didn't really come to complain about my neighbor upstairs. Classic, super duper noisy. Even has the, and this is for you too, he even has the classic squeaky bed. So I get to hear the minute of, and I said, this isn't even the annoying part. That's almost kind of sad. But there's about a minute of, and then that's it. It's done. So that I got a laugh out of that. And they said, oh, I guess it's worse for her. And I said, I don't know if it's a her or him, whatever. I'm not judging, but that is the least of my worries, is the fact that the bed really probably just needs a wrench to tighten up a couple bolts. That'd be the least that this person could do. But I'm convinced that they are dribbling those concrete basketballs, constructing a bowling alley perhaps. They own several pairs of concrete sneakers and boots. And apparently they are building something. I've wondered if they're building that bowling alley or a basketball court or something. But every once in a while, there'll just be some pounding, like hammer, dunk, 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 at all hours. Could be 3 in the morning, could be 3 in the afternoon. And I entertain myself wondering, what could that possibly be? Sometimes it's over by what would be the kitchen area. Sometimes it's in the bedroom area. Who knows? Totally crazy. So I have mentioned this, like I said, and they have said, well, we called and we said, hey, can you try to keep it down? And they don't say from which direction. Now, I will tell you this. Here's a little science fact. The place where I live has very high ceilings, but has very thin floors. So you've heard of places that have thin walls. The walls where I live are not very, very thin. They are not completely impervious to sound. Every once in a while you can hear something. One of my neighbors will play music on the weekends, and if I'm in my bathroom, I can hear them, but I don't hear them otherwise. So, go figure. Not a big deal. So the lateral transmission of audio through the walls, not a big deal. Barely noticeable. Barely an inconvenience, if you will. But for whatever reason, the walls here are thin enough. I'm sorry, the floors and ceilings are thin enough here so that not only can you hear people walking around, of course, but music. I believe my upstairs neighbor also plays the guitar, electric, of course. And so I believe the amplifier is on the floor directly, which means direct physical transmission, which is always nice. And the very high ceilings mean that this large column of air seems to really transmit nicely the lower tones. So that thumping and the concrete basketball effect and the concrete shoes and whatnot, it's this dunk, 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 and it could be any time, day or night. Now, here's the challenge, and tell me if you have the same issue if you're not owning. I mean, if you own a place, then you got a little bit more leverage. You're like, hey, knock it off. But when you're just renting a place, you basically get two options. During the day, you can call the leasing office, and they may or may not wander over, or they may call. More likely, they'll just pick up the phone and call and say, hey, excuse me, some of your neighbors are having some issues with your noise level, or whatever they say. But if it's nighttime or it's after business hours, you're basically calling a security service of some sort. It may be on-site or maybe off-site. Off-site is even worse. And you say, I'm in this place, I live here, and my neighbor upstairs seems to be doing something ridiculous, double dribbling the concrete Spalding. And they'll be like, okay, we'll go check it out. And they put down their phone, whatever TikTok For You page they were, or For You content they were scrolling through. And they may have to drive over, or maybe they're already around somewhere, wandering the halls. Now, here's the thing. If you're bouncing basketballs around at 2 a.m, you're not bouncing basketballs around for 20, 30, 40, 60 minutes. You're bouncing the basketballs, and then you do something else. And then maybe you're going to hammer on something, or you're going to test the bed and see if it's still squeaky for 28 seconds. But either way, you're not making this continuous noise. So when the security person decides to stop by, all that noise may be long gone. Or even better, get a knock at the door at 2 a.m, you stop making noise. And here's the other fun part. I said you can't really hear the noise laterally, right? So you don't hear noise through walls. You hear them through the floors and ceilings. Well, guess what? The hallway is also on a wall. So really, you can't hear the chaos, the maelstrom of slamming and banging and hammering and I'm not even talking about the squeaky bed. So you end up with knock on the door. Hey, are you making noise? No. And this happened with the people making the music noise. Now, here's the thing. When that neighbor downstairs was making all this crazy noise, I said something, and it turns out the leasing agent person who I spoke to said, you know what? Because she actually lived here somewhere on site. You know what? I was walking by there like a week ago, and I was shocked at how much noise they were making, and it was pretty late at night. So I'm glad you said something. So now I know that that's actually a problem. So that kind of opened up a small can of worms, because the leasing agent person said, like 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, hey, just so you know, we put a notice on their door after we talked to them. So if they continue making noise, this could lead to them being evicted. And I was like, oh, thanks for involving me in this. Wonderful. I just wanted them to turn their music down, not to get kicked out of the place. That's a lot. So then they would just turn down the music. They had music playing continuously for hours through, until 3 or 4 in the morning. And luckily I went to the gym or something, so I was not home when I got home at 3 in the morning. I think it was still music playing. I had left at, probably 1:30 in the morning, walked over to the gym. I heard the music. I'm like, I'll be gone anyway, so whatever. So when music is playing at 3 in the morning, really loud, it's like, all right, this is kind of a lot. So I called the security thing. They come over, they knock on the door, they turn off the music. Were you playing music? No. Okay. And then the security people call me, and they're like, they weren't playing any music. And I was like, okay, thanks. I think at one point that it might've been that one. They said, can we come into your apartment and see what we can hear? And I was like, it's 3 in the morning, dude. I'm trying to go to bed. Not entertaining. Come on. Anyway, I don't want to sound like I'm the troublemaker here, because I always say, and it's true, I'm like, I don't necessarily want to cause trouble. I certainly don't want to I don't want to provoke the retaliatory bent that some people have. You know what? I will tell you, when I was living in Sunnyvale, living in that duplex, there were people directly across the street. So they had a garage door. The garage door would be open, and it pointed directly at the bedroom window of where I lived. And so they would blast music midnight, 1 in the morning, later. And it was basically like a bell an acoustic bell directing the audio transmission line directly. So I walked over with the city ordinance about amplification equipment, and I just said, we don't have to discuss this. I'm just going to show it to you. Here, you keep it. After 10 p.m., you're just supposed to not play music like this. That's all. I'm not here to complain. I'm just going to point this out. And he got super pissed at me and was blasting music anytime or whatever. So, yeah, that's ridiculous. Because again, when it's written down, you just have to say, this has already been decided for us. We don't even have to argue. I'm not going to come over here and say, can you turn down your music? I'm just going to say, hey, it says it right here, 10 p.m. or whatever. I think it was 10 p.m. So yeah, right now, I'm kind of stuck in the circumstance of, they're making noise, but not continuously, but it is any time during the day. Now I will say I could set up a microphone. I'm speaking into one right now. Acoustic microphones for voice are not really ideal for picking up surface vibrations. If I had a tabletop mic, there are room mics that you set them on a table and they'll use the table as the pickup. That would be interesting if I had one of those. Do I want to spend money to do this? No. So essentially I get stuck in this loop of, hey, they're making noise. Well, I called them and they weren't making noise. Yeah, that is fun. So that's the current conundrum. But yeah, my neighbor upstairs will try not to make too much noise. I've been tempted to ask when that's going to start. I'm tempted to record the squeaky bed, which would be sort of humorous for me, but kind of obnoxious as well. So at the end of the day, I try to just ignore it. And luckily, like 95% of the day, total silence, or I wouldn't even know he lived up there. In fact, when he goes away, I think his name is Raymond. When he goes away now and then, I think it was last weekend, I was like, wow, it's been quiet for 2 days. It was quite nice. And then that is shattered very easily. But yeah, I'm curious to know what you would do. Curious to know if you have circumstances similar to this. So I got to figure out a nice way to connect feedback. If I pose these questions, some sort of, what do they call it on L1? It's engagement challenge. Yeah. What do you think? So I would be curious to know. But in general, I try not to cause the trouble. I try not to raise too much of a stink until it, gets above a threshold. And then like I said, I don't really want people to get kicked out, but occasionally some adult needs to come over and say, hey, you live with common walls in an apartment complex. If you want to have a band and you want to practice and rehearse and stuff, get yourself a rehearsal room. If you want to bounce concrete basketballs around, go find a nice basketball court somewhere. So living like an adult amongst other adults means you just kind of chill for a while. Make your noise during the day and then don't. Like, yeah, play your music. If you want to practice your guitar during the day, all right, it's mildly annoying. Occasionally it'll be while I'm recording a show, one of my various audio programs. And I'm like, ugh. And luckily, can't really pick it up on this microphone. But also that means, as I was saying before, I can't really record it either. So I can't really gather evidence. And to be honest, I don't want to spend engineering time. That's me, Mr. Engineer. I don't want to be spending my engineering time gathering evidence for a discourteous neighbor or about a discourteous neighbor. So yeah, I wish everybody would just kind of go, if I was going to walk a mile in their shoes, would I be wearing heavy concrete boots and clumping around in my apartment to annoy them? No. So there you go. I just wanted to vent a little bit. So thanks for listening. Maybe I'll do another episode about something less frustrating for me. The weekend is upon us. The weather is changing, like I said, and I think we're doing a bunch of stuff with Innovate for Vegas Foundation. We're coming up on our 3-year anniversary, which means we can, even though we've never come close, the cap on our receipts, if you are 1023EZ 501c3, which is cheaper and easier to file, but you have a $50,000 annual cap on your gross receipts for the first 3 years. So that's coming to an end. We can kick off our Mastodon server and whatnot. So I'll probably talk about that if I can get that in some sort of a state. The end of our fiscal year is June 30th. So I figure if we can get our Mastodon server up and running and be a geographically oriented activity pub server, the old Mastodon, That would be our foray into decentralized, federated, intra and inter city, community, whatever, information awareness, which is one of our smart city projects that we're working on. So the Mastodon server is kind of a recognizable brand, maybe an on-ramp to, I guess you could say, a decentralized communal collection of resources. And the content creator marketplace here in Vegas is sort of crazy. A lot of Instagram, a lot of TikTok, but a lot of Instagram. And of course they cross post, so whatever. But so the Threads integration, to the extent that they've integrated, will be interesting to see how that works out. And then some of our other projects like my municipality, which will be purpose built around federation and decentralization. So ActivityPub, maybe AT Proto if you're a Blue Sky fan, but AT Proto is problematic at scale, so maybe not. In fact, if I had my way, probably not, or maybe definitely not. There's nothing specifically wrong with ActivityPub, especially if you like Activity Stream and structured data, except for their caching, which they really don't do. So you end up with the /dot effect, and it's kind of funny, which I'll leave you with this. Because young people today are coming up with things without the experience, back in my day, the experience of things like the /dot effect. And if you don't know what that is, I'll just tell you really quickly. /dot used to be a super popular website for nerds. So somebody would post an article and it would say, hey, here's something on this website. It's a small website. It's not CNN. It's like one website has this article with a picture. Check it out. And then they would get /dotted. So you get all these simultaneous hits to the one URL. So the website would go down. Oh, you took down that website. So then the notion of if you're going to do that, post a link to the cached version or, various mitigation attempts. And, so there was a communal effort to try to not take down websites just from referring to them, which is kind of silly. Now, today, with ActivityPub, when you post something like, hey, here's a link to the latest, article on some person's blog or some person's e-commerce site, check it out. Mastodon generates what's called a preview card. It's basically the Open Graph data, so an image, a description, a title, and the official URL, and it generates that in your feed. So you're like, oh yes, that's the typical Facebook style Open Graph. Twitter cards, similar. So when it generates that preview card, it regenerates that preview card on any server onto which a particular post has been shared or reshared or other interactions. So every time somebody's going to look at that, it's going to regenerate the preview card, which means hitting that server to grab the image and the description text. So right now, that's just grossly done. And there's really no mitigation, no attempt to cache. And I've had this conversation on a Mastodon thread. They're like, why not just have the first server that gets a link cache it? And I was like, well, first of all, what is the first server in a collection of hundreds, thousands of individual servers and or initiations of this preview card generation? Like you would have no idea which one is first. So you could assume each one is first, which is the problem now. And then what does it mean to cache? Because if you cache it without having a standard way of caching, then it doesn't really matter if you cache because everybody's not going to know about this. So really one of the failings of ActivityPub, in my opinion, is that they've let the /dot effect reemerge onto the internets, which can be frustrating. So that's something that I will probably talk about in another episode of Coffee Solo. In the meantime, I've already talked about Amazon Vinetastic. That's been annoying. I'll probably do some more discussion about that in the coming days or maybe a week or two. I have surpassed the 80 item order. So as soon as I finish up 72 reviews, I will qualify for the gold tier. And I will simply say, as I said in the episode Vinetastic of this very audio program, I already have too many boxes and I'm ordering 3 items. And when you receive an item or 2 or 3 or 4 every day for a month, obviously not 4 every day, But, I've been receiving a package almost every day or every day in some weeks for about 5 weeks or so. That you see every rough edge, every annoying facet, every gap, every pain point, especially when it comes to Amazon logistics. So it's been a sort of frustrating. And I did do an episode of FFS Talk on Thursday about customer experience and how customer experience is being left to chance more and more now through automation, chats, and whatnot. So my interactions with Amazon regarding their sloppy shipping now and then have also been a disappointment. So yeah, that's something I'll probably talk about again. So there you go. I'll leave it there. Don't forget, there's also buymeacoffee.com/Dan Hugo, and I do the Monday Buy Me an Update with a very brief rundown on the previous week's audio program episodes and news and announcements and whatnot. And so yeah, that's it. I'll leave it there. It's 6:15 in the morning. If I sound a little sleepy, I have not gone to bed yet. So we'll see if that changes. Take care, and thanks for listening. Ciao.